Hello there, my name is Steve Gill. I'm a fellow member of the Northwood Golf Club, and I was asked if I would share a little video with you for my interest and passion for whiskies. So welcome to the virtual whiskey tasting on YouTube. I've been collecting whiskey for about 25 years, and like many people in my 20s, whiskey wasn't something I would ever have in a pub or a bar, and never really had a second thought about it. And that changed when I moved up to Perth and Kinross in the mid-90s, and was lucky enough to find myself in a lovely little hotel in a glen that had an amazing whiskey bar. But even more so, the owners of the hotel, who turned out that actually just retired from being one of the distillers team at Bell's Distillery in Pitlochry. And the rest since then has been history. So you can see behind me some of my passion in different bottles. And what we're going to do on today's video is share a little bit of insight into how whiskey's made, how it's distilled, more as well about the individual bottles, and some of the things to take account of if you want to get to know whiskey a little bit better. Things like the alcohol and how that changes, and how utterly different whiskies can be in taste and flavour and power. So covering things like alcohol content, colour, the barrels that they use, and a little about the different distilleries themselves. So sit back for the next couple of minutes, enjoy a little bit about whiskey, and if it encourages you to try something, then so much the better. Thank you. So the next part of our understanding of whiskey combines elements of how it's actually matured, how it's distilled, and the impact of that, how whiskey changes with age, and also things like its flavour and its alcohol content. And I have a selection here for you that brings this home in some really good examples. So some of the obvious things you can see with whiskey is its colour. One of the obvious things you can tell from a whiskey when you look at the bottle is its alcohol content. But let's start from the very beginnings. For a spirit to be called a whiskey, it needs to be at least 3 years old. So it'll have been in its barrel for 3 years. And what people don't realise is when whiskey is first distilled, it is a clear liquid, and actually quite sweet, but very high alcohol content. So this is a really great example of a journey with whiskey, and it's a young story. So this is a very interesting distillery called The Lakes, and as the name suggests, it's based up in Bassenthwaite in the Lake District. Probably the first truly great English distillery, and the work they've done has been fantastic. But the reason I wanted to show you these two is because this bottle is the first bottling that they undertook in the first year of production, which was 2015. And if you had a look at the label, it would actually say The Lakes Spirit, and it's got the number 1 on the label as well, just up here. So that means that it's the first of the whiskey they've made, but obviously they can't call it whiskey, so it's been placed in barrels and waiting to mature. And then each year, up to, this is the 4th year, I've been sent a bottle, and I've been able to see the change in the colour, obviously the longer the whiskey stays in the barrel. So this is the latest bottle they've sent through, and this is a 4-year-old malt. And you can see straight away it's exactly the same distillation from the same batch, but the colour has changed markedly as the wood from the barrel and the barrel itself has influenced the look, the flavour, and the strength of the spirit. So on the one hand, this spirit here is 40% ABV. And that is typical of most high street whiskies. If you went down the shelves of most supermarkets, you would see 40% is typical. Whereas this one, 4 years later, has actually changed because some of it has actually evaporated in the barrel, and the strength of the alcohol content has gone up, which is where you get the expression cask strength. So what a lot of distillers will do is once they're ready to bottle a particular malt, they will then take different bottlings from different barrels. They're all the same distillation, but different barrels to get that blend right if they want to sell it commercially as a 40% proof. Commercially as well, that also means it goes further. They can actually use more whiskies to make it go further. Whereas cask strength, and this bottle is 46.6%. It's exactly the same year and batch as this, but we can see that it's got older and stronger in its content. So that is getting close to being a cask strength whisky. And then in terms of the other bottles I have in front of me here, is good examples of what happens when you put whisky in different barrels and for how long you leave it in the barrel and the distillation itself, and then how it matures. So on the first one we have here, quite an interesting example. Bought this bottle in 2009. This is a Strath Isla. Not many people know of Strath Isla as a well-known distillery, but actually most people would have heard of Chivers Regal and the Chivers brothers. Well, this is the main whisky that goes into a Chivers Regal blended whisky. And instantly you can see just how dark that colour is. So this whisky, which was actually distilled in 1960 and bottled in 2009, so this whisky in this bottle is close to 50 years old, had been sat in sherry casks. Hence the reason it's so dark and rich and looks like dark fruit in colour. And when you shake the bottle, as I always like to do, because that wakes it up, you can smell just how powerful the smell of fruit and caramel is in there. And that's as a result of being in sherry casks for all that time, for nearly 50 years. Interestingly, that's only 43% proof. Then we come on to another one which I would thoroughly recommend as a distillery. If you wanted to try a whisky that's very fruity and very rich in flavour, so very much the kind of what I call Christmas whiskies, then Glendronach make fabulous sherried whisky. So this is a special collection they do each couple of years called Grandeur, and it's a small batch, so 600 bottles they made of this. It is delicious. If a whisky can be delicious, then this is it. But again, it's heavily sherried, as they say, and look at the colour. And so finally, as a contrast for that, and going right away from being heavily fruit influenced and sherry cask, this is a fantastic distillery called Clynelish. And they make some really, really lovely, great whiskies, and very different from everything else we've seen here. And the first thing you notice about it is just how pale it looks, almost like a wine, sort of an elderflower colour in there as well. And that is down to the fact this was actually distilled and then matured in oak casks, American oak casks, and not with sherry. And the colour that's come from that is purely the wood as well. That's 46%. The flavour of this is very light and very floral. This is something you can actually have as an aperitif, which not a lot of people would tend to think of doing with a whisky. They probably tend to think of it more as an after dinner or a treat, as I said, in the evening. That is fantastic. So if you can get a Clynelish, something similar to this, then you'll thoroughly enjoy drinking it, I'm sure. This is 20 years old, aged for 20 years. But as I said, looking at the difference in colour, you can tell a broad range of what's going on here. So there we have our first instalment. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope I've whetted your appetite to listen to more and find out more about the fantastic spirit that is whisky. In the next episode, as they say, I'm actually going to take you on a journey of understanding a couple of tastings on some exceptional whiskies. If you would like to see the next episode, and I have a few up my sleeve, then we have a bit of a deal for you. With the challenges this year to our golf club, and particularly to Adam and his captain's charity, we said that what we'd like to do is, if we can raise £50 as a result of your interest in whisky from today's video, then I will commit to posting the next video out in the course of the next few days. That can be £5 from 10 members or whatever you feel is appropriate. But if you do, please just drop Adam a line, let him know. And once we hit the 50 quid, then I'm going to take you on even more excitement and show you some of the fantastic examples I've got behind me over the years. And there are a few really to savour. Thanks very much. Take care.
Sláinte.